Hi.
Just before I ask my question, I just want you to know that both the people who are asking questions today are from Texas.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's significant, but I find it interesting.
Okay, that's good.
So my question is, when I let go of thinking about something, is it acceptance or avoidance? And ultimately, is there any difference between just dropping a thought and true acceptance?
Uh-huh. Yeah. One consideration is whether in any particular situation there's a need for action.
Sorry?
Whether in any situation, if you, let's say you drop thought, in some situations you may need some thought in order to determine what course of action to take. So it's always easier to look at actual concrete examples. Let's say you lost your job and you say to yourself, I'm just going to stop thinking about it and see what happens. For a lot of the time that may be a good thing, but there is a time in a case like this where applied thought may be helpful. So in certain situations that require action, and losing your job, unless you have plenty of money and you don't really need a job, it may require some action. Now, in some kinds of action, there's no prior thinking that's required, and that's action that is an immediate response to a sudden situation that arises, where you become alert and present, and you look at the situation. And this is not the kind of thing, like losing a job is not one of those situations. It's a situation that requires an immediate response, where something happens and you look and you're present, you're not thinking, and then immediately out of that state of presence, right action arises. And sometimes people experience that kind of right action that arises not out of thinking but out of presence. Even people who have never practiced presence, occasionally in an emergency situation, enter that state. And then afterwards, when they are asked, oh, you did such a wonderful thing when you whatever saved that person's life or whatever it is, and then the person says, I don't feel that I did anything great, I just did it. So in certain situations there's no decision making involved, perhaps because there's no time. There's just the situation itself puts you into a state of alertness, and out of that state of alertness, if there's anything you can do, anything you need to do to respond to it, you do it. So that's a kind of there's a kind of action of that kind that does not require thinking at all. In fact, thinking would interfere with right action. Then there are other situations where a certain amount of applied thinking may be helpful, as long as the thinking is rooted in awareness or stillness. So it's not thinking that takes over your mind and won't let go of you. Let's come back to the example I gave. You lose your job. Okay, what course of action can I take now? What kind of job do I want to look for? Or do I want to have my own business? Do I want to create something of my own? Do I want to create an app for the smartphones that millions of people will want, and that would make them all very conscious? Maybe you'll do that. Oh, that may be an idea. But that requires some thinking. What kind of an app? And what does it look like? So you start to think and use applied thinking. And when after a few minutes or half an hour even, or an hour, probably not, but of applied thinking, the thinking runs dry, then you go back into stillness. You oscillate between applied thinking and then becoming still, or go for a walk in nature, or look at the sky, or feel the inner body, or become aware of your breathing, or just be present in the moment. And then after a while, apply thinking again, or spontaneously a thought may come into your head that is an answer or a creative insight. So you don't, in a situation like that, it would not be right to drop all thinking and say, I lost my job, but I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about finding a new job at all, it's just going to happen. It may, but it's more powerful if you have the two dimensions in your life where you apply thinking and even action. You take some action when you've done some thinking, you take some action, but the thinking needs to be rooted in stillness. So the vital thing is to have the ability to step back into that aware space when you know that at this time I've thought as much as I can think about it, and then you put it aside, you step back into awareness. You may find that you wake up in the middle of the night and compulsive thinking happens, and you need to be aware of that, and that's usually thinking where you can't really take any action. That is futile thinking, thinking that does not lead to action, like worry. That's the kind of thinking that needs to be dropped. So often, to determine whether thinking has a place or not is there anything I can do right now? Is there any action that I should take right now? Other kinds of thinking is think that you could just go around in circles. When people worry, it never leads to anything at all. So it's knowing what it is that that particular situation requires. Do you have an example from your own life where you're questioning whether to think about it or not?
Yeah. Well, the way I was thinking of it is, okay, a thought comes into my head and I think, I'm not following that. That's just, I'm not going there. And is that really accepting it, or is that sort of avoiding it?
Well, it depends.
And it doesn't matter what it is as long as you let go of it.
Well, it might be a thought that is a sudden idea, that's a creative idea that's possible. So some thoughts come from a deeper level and say, but this is not what you're talking about right now.
I'm talking more about judgments or...
Yes. Those things are best relinquished, but that, of course, to be able to recognize their futility is usually the first step, to see they have no useful purpose. In fact, it's the opposite. They actually detract from your aliveness, your ability to feel present and alive. And it takes something away from you. It lessens your energy field, those kinds of thoughts, judgments, and so on. So once you recognize that they have no real purpose except to strengthen a false sense of self, when you can be critical of somebody, and then that strengthens the ego, because you're in a position of superiority, according to the ego. So those things, you recognize thinking that you can do without, that you don't really want. And often the recognition itself is enough. That you may not even, because then the thinking is no longer possessing you. The recognition that a certain kind of thought is futile and actually even harmful, that you don't want it, that recognition is often enough for the thought to subside by itself, because it implies that there is an awareness there. Without the awareness behind the thought, you can't want to let go of the thought, because then you are the thought. So when you're totally in the grip of a thought, there's no awareness, you are not there, you are possessed by the thought. And then the question of whether to let go of the thought or not doesn't even arise, because it wouldn't even occur to you that there's something beyond that thought. So there needs already to be an awareness there to recognize a thought as not useful, and that you don't really want it. And that often is enough. You may not even take the next step and say, okay, now I need to dissolve this thought. It already has lost its grip on you once the awareness is there. But it may try to come back again a few minutes later. And then you again go into the inner body that's an anchor for staying present. Feel the aliveness in your energy field, especially if you're in bed late at night, during the night, and thoughts come in. Feel the aliveness in the energy field and be there. And then the useless kind of thinking that we call worry or anxious thought, fearful thought, regretful thought, whatever it is, those thoughts, if any thought comes and you're in that state of alive presence, it'll actually be an insight, a sudden, oh, that's something I could do. And then tomorrow you might try and do that. So those thoughts can come, and they can only come when there's a certain amount of spaciousness in you. Or no thought may come at all, that's wonderful too. Just feel the energy, feel the every cell is alive with presence. That's much better than thinking, oh, it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.